Recently, through my wife's friend, I accidentally discovered that she had been unfaithful for the past 20 years. I decided to end our marriage. My wife, 44 female, and I, 43 male, have shared 20 years of marriage, and our journey began when we were high school sweethearts. She was a senior, and I was a junior. Our relationship endured a long-distance phase during her first 2 years of college, while I finished high school and completed a year at community college. Eventually, we attended college in the same city, and from that point we have been inseparable, living together and building our life. We married the summer after my college graduation, and overall, our marriage has been wonderful. However, I recently initiated a divorce after uncovering that she had been involved with multiple men during those 2 long-distance years. Just after Christmas, we had a small reunion with a few of my wife's college friends. It was a cozy evening filled with laughter and reminiscing as we caught up over dinner and shared memories. During the conversation, my wife casually mentioned that we met in high school. She didn't clarify that we were dating back then, just that we had known each other since high school. One of her old college roommates exclaimed how remarkable it was that we met so young, had our wild college years, and still ended up together. I played along, jokingly saying I wasn't sure if my wife was as wild as I had been. At that moment, the roommate began to share a story, but my wife abruptly cut her off, saying she felt uncomfortable. Her sudden reaction made my senses tingle with suspicion. I decided to clarify things and mentioned that we actually started dating in high school and remained together throughout her entire college experience. An awkward silence fell over the table, and the rest of the evening was noticeably tense. As we were leaving, one of her other roommates pulled me aside and suggested I should have an honest conversation with my wife about what really happened during her college years. On the way home from dinner, I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling I had. So I asked my wife about what her roommate had hinted at. She kind of blew me off, saying it wasn't a big deal. I told her it was important that she be honest with me, but she brushed it off again, insisting it wasn't important. Her dismissive attitude only heightened my suspicion. When we got home, I decided to take a firm stand. I told her I was going to stay at my brother's house until she was ready to talk about what had really happened during her college years. The next day she came over, visibly anxious. She finally admitted to sleeping with several men during her first 2 years of college. She tried to downplay it, saying she didn't consider it a big deal at the time because we were long distance and she didn't think our high school romance would last. This revelation hit me like a ton of bricks. I pressed for more details, feeling a mix of anger and betrayal. She confessed that it was at least 10 different men, including at least 3 guys she had introduced to me as friends during my weekend visits, and 1 guy she was still in contact with. Hearing this, I felt a surge of emotions: anger, sadness, betrayal. I knew our marriage couldn't survive this. I told her I wanted a divorce, and would start the paperwork as soon as possible. True to my word, I began the process on January 2nd. Her attempts to downplay her actions and dismiss my feelings only solidified my decision. This wasn't just about the infidelity. It was about the lies and the disrespect that had spanned decades. Her family and most of my family are telling me I shouldn't throw away my marriage over a few mistakes. They keep saying that everyone makes mistakes and that I should forgive her for the sake of our long history together. But to me, this isn't just about a few mistakes. It's about a pattern of behavior that spanned years. Cheating on me with multiple men for 2 years is not something I can overlook, no matter when it happened. The fact that she continued to maintain relationships with these guys right in front of me, even introducing them as friends, is an unacceptable level of disrespect. Our children are 17 and 19, practically adults, and I believe they will understand why I need to end the marriage. They've seen us as a loving couple, and I hope they realize that my decision is about preserving my self-respect and integrity. I feel like I'm losing my mind with the number of people telling me to overlook years of infidelity and decades of lies. Everywhere I turn, I hear voices urging me to forgive and forget, to salvage what we've built. They tell me I'm being unreasonable, that I should focus on the good times and the life we've shared. But how can I, when every memory is now tainted by the knowledge of her betrayal? It's not just the act of cheating. It's the deceit, the lies, the continuation of friendships with those she cheated with. How am I supposed to trust her again? How am I supposed to look at her the same way, knowing what she did, and how she dismissed my feelings when I confronted her? I keep questioning myself, wondering if I'm overreacting, if I'm being too harsh. But then I remember the pain I felt when she admitted to her affairs. The anger and betrayal that surged through me. I remember the nights spent wondering how she could introduce me to those men. How she could maintain those friendships without a hint of guilt. It's not something I can simply get over. It's a fundamental breach of trust that has shattered our marriage. Am I wrong for leaving? I don't think so. I feel like I'm fighting for my dignity. For my right to not be lied to. To not be disrespected in such a profound way. It's not about revenge or holding a grudge. It's about acknowledging that some lines, once crossed, cannot be uncrossed. I'm writing this because my wife and a few of her friends have been telling me it's normal to sleep with other people in a long-distance relationship, and that I'm the odd one out for not doing the same. I felt like I was being gaslit and needed an outside perspective. Since we live in a state with a waiting period to finalize a divorce, I thought it would be wise to get some insight before things are set in stone. After hearing these comments, I see a handful of people agreeing that it's common to sleep around in long-distance relationships, but they seem to be a minority. During those 2 years of college, we saw each other a couple of weekends a month. I lived about 3 hours away from her college. So while it was long distance, it wasn't like we were separated by the entire country. We didn't go months without seeing each other. The 3 guys I met while she was in college were introduced to me during parties. These weren't formal introductions, just casual meetups at social gatherings. The topic of me being her boyfriend never really came up, so I have no idea if they knew we were in a relationship. One of these guys is still in our lives because he married a mutual friend from college. He isn't some secret contact she's been messaging on the side. He's someone we've both been in touch with regularly for years. After finding out about my wife's infidelity, I spoke to him a few times to understand his side. He told me he had no idea we were dating back then and has since blocked my wife on social media out of respect for me. Some people have questioned how her college roommates didn't figure out the timeline at our wedding. The answer lies in how we handled our marriage celebrations. My wife and I had a very small ceremony with just close family in Texas. Later we went back to the East Coast and threw a big party for our friends. We skipped the typical wedding reception traditions where couples share details about how they met and their journey together. Because of this, her roommates never pieced together that we started dating before she went to college. They seemed to assume that we only started dating during the year we both lived in the same city, and then moved in together. This gap in their understanding explains why they never questioned the timeline or suspected any infidelity. I was open to therapy or some kind of attempt to save the marriage. I genuinely believed that with some effort we might be able to work through this. But her constant insistence that what she did was perfectly normal and that I'm the one who's overreacting has been too much for me to handle. She keeps telling me that sleeping with other people in a long-distance relationship is commonplace, and that I'm being unreasonable. The only time she showed any remorse or even offered to reconcile was when I started filing the divorce paperwork. That brief moment of contrition quickly evaporated, and in the last week, she's reverted to her original stance, insisting that she's right and I'm overreacting. This back and forth is why I feel like I'm being gaslit. It seems so obvious to me that her actions were a major betrayal. Yet I've got my wife and others telling me that it's normal and that I'm the one who's making a big deal out of nothing. Her dismissive attitude only adds to my confusion and frustration. I tried to communicate how deeply her infidelity hurt me, hoping she would understand the gravity of the situation. Instead, she minimizes my feelings, treating them as an overreaction to something trivial. It's like she's rewriting the rules of our relationship and expecting me to accept them without question. This constant invalidation of my emotions is maddening. I feel like I'm being manipulated into doubting my own perceptions and feelings. Her refusal to acknowledge the seriousness of her actions, coupled with her attempts to normalize infidelity, only deepens the rift between us. It's not just the cheating itself, but her inability to recognize why it's a big deal and why I feel so betrayed. I'm at a point where I need to protect my own mental and emotional well-being. I can't continue in a marriage where my feelings are dismissed and my trust is shattered. Her lack of genuine remorse and her insistence that I'm the one who's out of line make it impossible for me to see a path forward together. I'm not overreacting. I'm standing up for myself and my right to a respectful, honest relationship. I'm not getting a paternity test unless my kids ask for it themselves. I have no doubts about their biological connection to me, and even if a test showed otherwise, it wouldn't change how I feel about them. I love them more than anything, and my wife's infidelity doesn't alter the fact that they've been my kids for 19 years. They will always be my kids no matter what until the day I stop breathing. We were definitely exclusively dating at the time. First of all, dating culture was a lot different 20-ish years ago, and exclusivity was pretty much the default for most people. There wasn't this open relationship or casual dating mindset that seems more prevalent today. It was understood that if you were with someone, you were with them alone. Second, before she left for college, we had a long and difficult conversation about maintaining our relationship long distance. It wasn't an easy discussion, but she was adamant about staying together. She even joked that her dad would come after me if I started sleeping around with other girls at my school. That joke carried a lot of weight, indicating how serious she was about us staying faithful to each other. Another clear indicator was the situation with my senior prom. She couldn't attend because she was away at college, and when I suggested going with a platonic female friend, she got very upset. Her reaction showed how much our relationship meant to her, and reinforced the idea that we were exclusively together. To avoid hurting her feelings, I ended up skipping my prom and spent the night hanging out with her instead. While we might not have explicitly used the word exclusive, all these reasons combined with the nature of our relationship before she left for college made it clear that we were committed to each other. The expectation of fidelity was implicit in our actions and discussions. I followed up with the friend who suggested I should have an honest conversation with my wife. She revealed that 10 guys would be on the low end, and mentioned that there was at least one pregnancy scare during those years, which I had no idea about. Honestly, the number of guys isn't the main issue for me. What really matters is that my wife seems completely incapable of understanding why her actions were wrong and why I feel so deeply betrayed. It would make a huge difference if she showed any genuine desire to fix this, but she hasn't. Throughout our conversations, she consistently dismissed my feelings, telling me I was overreacting to what she considered totally normal behavior. She didn't express any regret or consideration for the hurt she caused until she realized I was serious about filing for divorce. Only then did she get defensive and angry. But even in that moment, it was clear her concern was more about the consequences than about my feelings. The lack of remorse was evident. She didn't offer to fix things or suggest ways we could work through this until I had already started the paperwork and notified her that I had a lawyer. It wasn't about repairing our relationship, it was about damage control. This response reinforced my belief that she doesn't grasp the depth of her betrayal. It's not just about the infidelity itself, but about her ongoing disregard for my feelings and our marriage. Her dismissive attitude, especially in the face of such a serious issue, left me no choice but to move forward with the divorce. I believe we can manage co-parenting. Our kids are older, and I've been saving for their college and post-high school expenses for years, so custody and financial issues shouldn't be a major hurdle. We're both financially stable and earn good incomes. I'm open to therapy if she's willing, but at this point it feels more about becoming effective co-parents and finding closure rather than saving our marriage. I've taken steps to move forward with the separation. I hired a lawyer who drafted an intent to separate documents and sent it to her via certified mail. This isn't an official divorce paper filed with the state. It's more of a preliminary step, ensuring she has the opportunity to hire her own lawyer if she wishes to contest it. The actual divorce process will likely span several months. For now, I'm not fully moved out. I've been staying at my brother's place while I figure out a more permanent living situation. Regarding the timeline, the dinner with her friends occurred on the 26th. That night I went to my brother's house to cool off and give her some space to reflect. Over the next 4 or 5 days we had multiple conversations and it became clear that she didn't think she had done anything wrong. If she had shown any remorse, regret, or basic consideration for my feelings, I might have reconsidered and waited. But her dismissive attitude left me no choice. So I found a divorce lawyer and we quickly filled out the standard intent to separate agreements, which were sent the same day. Even now we are not legally divorced, and I'm not certain if there is an official legal concept of separation in my state. Nonetheless, I've made it clear that this process is happening, and I've started the necessary steps to move forward. Update 1. Let's dive into what I discovered about her college years. After several counseling sessions with my wife and conversations with 2 of her former roommates, it became apparent that her roommates had suspected something was amiss back in college. They mentioned that the situation seemed off and likely involved cheating. My wife had told them that we both had some wild times in college but had worked things out before we got married, so they never felt the need to bring it up. The roommate who pulled me aside during the dinner was particularly uncomfortable with the fact that my wife had clearly never discussed this with me and felt I deserved to know. Regarding the men she was involved with, it turns out that the introductions to some of these guys weren't intentional. One of the men she slept with ended up dating and eventually marrying one of our mutual friends from college. This was the guy she remained in contact with. In our counseling sessions, my wife initially tried to shift the blame onto me, suggesting that I had pushed her into those situations. However, she has since acknowledged that it was wrong. When I visited her during college, she often planned for us to stay in her room or hang out alone. But I wanted to experience college parties, as I had missed out on that during high school and community college. She didn't expect me to meet the guys she had been with, but they were often at these parties and she felt she couldn't avoid it. While I still think it's incredibly disrespectful, it's somewhat less egregious than if she had intentionally paraded me in front of them. The whole situation has been a complex web of half-truths and omissions, which makes it all the more difficult to process. Her friends suspected but didn't intervene, and my wife managed to maintain this facade for years. Most of our therapy sessions have centered around why I see her infidelity as a significant betrayal, while she doesn't. Initially, she rationalized her actions by saying that none of these men were in relationships with her. They were mostly one-night stands or friends with benefits. In her view, these encounters didn't qualify as a big deal since they weren't romantic relationships. Her words, not mine. From my perspective, the nature of the relationships was irrelevant. We never agreed that such behavior was acceptable. In fact, she had actively discouraged me from doing the same. The double standard was glaring, and added to my sense of betrayal. As we delved deeper into this issue over the course of 2 therapy sessions and after she consulted with some friends, my wife began to see things differently. She now acknowledges that her actions were a breach of our trust and the foundation of our relationship. This new shared understanding has allowed us to discuss the situation more openly and honestly, moving from heated arguments to productive conversations. This shift in our dynamic gives me some hope for our future as co-parents. While the prospect of saving our marriage feels out of reach, being able to communicate honestly about our past can help us establish a healthier relationship moving forward. This is crucial for the well-being of our children and for navigating the complexities of co-parenting effectively. Now here's why I'm 100% committed to getting a divorce. 2 pivotal things came to light that made it clear I needed to end the marriage. First, about 10 years ago, we hit a rough patch and went through a period of almost 2 years without any intimacy. She had mentioned that our physical relationship was becoming monotonous, so I tried to bring some excitement into it. Nothing extreme, just some light roleplay and items you'd find at a novelty store. However, it turned out she was fixated on some intimate experiences from her college days, which she is not comfortable discussing. She wanted me to recreate those experiences, but when I did, it made her feel awkward and guilty because it reminded her of other men she had been with. The fact that she insists these experiences were meaningless, yet they still affect our marriage, tells me they were more significant than she's willing to admit. Second, she confessed to flirting with coworkers during business trips since the pandemic ended. Although she claims nothing physical happened, it did progress to the point where she went on a date with one of her male colleagues. For me, that was the absolute deal breaker. These revelations shattered any remaining trust I had. The first issue showed me that past experiences were still haunting our present despite her claims otherwise. The second issue made it clear that she was willing to cross boundaries again, even after everything we had been through. These 2 factors combined made it impossible for me to see any hope for salvaging our marriage. We have informed our children that we are getting a divorce. We explained to them that it stemmed from some bad decisions made during college, decisions that we've been unable to move past. During the conversation, my 19-year-old, who is currently in college, directly asked if I had been unfaithful to my wife while she was away at school. This question caught my wife off guard, but she bravely admitted to our children that she was the one who cheated. We have both agreed to refrain from sharing any more details with the kids. It's essential to protect them from the more painful aspects of our past. I reassured them that despite the separation, both of us remain fully committed to being there for them. I emphasized that we are in therapy to ensure we handle the divorce in the best possible way for our family's well-being. Furthermore, I made it clear to the kids that if they ever feel the need to talk about the situation, whether with us or a therapist, they have my full support. I want them to know they can express their feelings and seek help without any hesitation. It's crucial for them to understand that their emotional health is a top priority for both of us, and we are doing everything we can to navigate this difficult time together as a family. We've begun discussions with a mediator to figure out the best way to proceed with the divorce. Unless something changes, it looks like we can part ways amicably. Both of us are financially stable, free of major debts, and with our kids being older, custody isn't a significant concern. The past few months have been tough, but I'm managing. I'm actually thankful that my last post gained so much attention. It validated my feelings and pushed me to seek counseling with my wife. To be fair, my 19-year-old daughter has had her share of difficult relationships. She's been hurt by boyfriends who either cheated on her or abruptly left her for someone else. Given her past experiences with untrustworthy men, it's understandable why her initial thought might be that I was the one who cheated. Adding to her suspicion is the fact that I was the one who left the house. In her eyes, seeing her father leave the family home might have seemed like an admission of guilt or wrongdoing. Her experiences have understandably shaped her perspective, making it easier for her to believe that I could be at fault. When cheating came up, my wife made it clear that she was the one who being unfaithful. To be honest, I'm not overly concerned about the narrative here. From what I can tell, my wife hasn't said anything negative about me to our kids. Moreover, considering her recent admissions of flirting and cheating, along with her readiness to file for a joint, amicable divorce after just 6 weeks and 3 counseling sessions, it seems she was more prepared to move on than I was. This readiness on her part makes the logistical aspects of the divorce smoother, but it does sting a bit to see her having an easier time walking away from a 20-year marriage than I am. I'm fairly certain she's already looking for a new partner. During our meeting with the equitable divorce mediator, she explicitly mentioned that we are still married until the divorce is finalized and that any infidelity before that date could jeopardize our amicable settlement. This statement struck me as somewhat ironic given that our divorce is rooted in infidelity. Nevertheless, my soon-to-be ex was visibly annoyed when this topic came up. Additionally, I suspect that my current living situation, crashing in the guest room, might be hindering her prospects of moving on quickly. At the end of the day, I'm doing my best to come to terms with the end of our marriage. I've been attending therapy on my own, in addition to our couples sessions to help me cope. I'm mentally bracing myself for the likelihood of encountering the co-worker she only dated again. However, I'm hopeful that I'll find a new place and move out before the divorce is finalized. If everything goes smoothly with the mediator, we should be divorced by summer. I'll have my own place and she can just date whoever she wants. Update 2. My wife and I have finalized our divorce and everything is now official. We managed to have an uncontested, amicable divorce with minimal disagreements. Our lawyers collaborated to draft the plan through mediation, and a judge signed off on it a few weeks ago. Ultimately, the divorce process was straightforward. The only significant complication was related to our 17-year-old, who was adamant about staying with me due to the deterioration of their relationship with my ex-wife. Initially, my wife resisted, ready to challenge the uncontested divorce. However, our son made it clear that she could either allow him a few months to process and rebuild their relationship or force him to stay with her until he turned 18 and risk never seeing him again. Although I felt my son's stance was a bit harsh, it did prompt my wife to back down. We moved forward with the agreement that I would have primary physical custody until his birthday later this year. Throughout this period, I've encouraged my son to remain open to mending his relationship with his mother. Despite the actions she took before he was born, she did care for and love him for 17 years. As the divorce proceedings advanced, I noticed my son spending more time with my ex-wife, which gives me hope that they will eventually reconcile. This has been a challenging time for all of us, but I'm optimistic that, with time, they will be able to rebuild their bond. In the end, we divided our retirement funds and investments equally, 50-50. My wife really liked the house, whereas I didn't, so she kept the house and most of the furnishings. To balance things out, she took out a mortgage to pay me back for half of the equity and half of the estimated replacement value of the furniture. Most of our other belongings were easy to split. She kept her car, I kept mine, and we divided our personal items like my music gear and her hobby equipment, along with clothing and personal effects. For anything that was harder to divide, we agreed to sell it and split the profits. Thankfully, we had already documented most of our valuable items and electronics for an insurance rider we added to our home insurance a few years ago, which made this process smoother. Things have been going well for me personally. Both of my kids spend most of their time at my place, and we have maintained a close relationship, which was my biggest concern during the divorce. I'm relieved and grateful that this bond remains strong. I've moved into a new house that I truly love, a place that feels like a fresh start. In a nod to my midlife crisis, I traded in my old minivan for a sleek Lexus LC550, a decision that has brought a surprising amount of joy. On another positive note, a woman at work, someone from a different department so we don't work directly together, invited me out for a coffee date. I was upfront with her, explaining that I'm not ready to date just yet. She was understanding and graciously offered to take a rain check, expressing her willingness to go out with me when I'm ready. This invitation was a pleasant surprise. She's incredibly smart, has a great sense of humor, and our professional roles are distant enough that there's no awkwardness at work. My ex and I are still attending couples counseling, but now it's focused on achieving closure for our marriage and ensuring we can co-parent effectively. These sessions have been invaluable for processing everything and maintaining a healthy, positive environment despite the circumstances. However, they've also confirmed that divorce was the right decision. It's become evident through our discussions that my wife began dating as soon as the divorce process started, indicating that whatever love we had was already fading. I'm pretty sure the co-worker she claimed was just a friend even dropped her off at our recent session. Surprisingly, this didn't really upset me, which is a clear sign that I too was ready to move on from the marriage. In the end, healing from the betrayal will take time, but I feel like I'm making good progress and can confidently say that the divorce was the right choice. I've shed more tears in the past 4 months than in the last 20 years combined, but for the past month, I've genuinely felt good about myself for the first time in a long while. I'm enjoying my newfound independence, staying busy helping my 17-year-old prepare for college in the fall and looking forward to a coffee date with a smart, funny woman in a month or two. The journey through our divorce taught me the value of honest communication. Looking back, I wish we had been more transparent with each other from the start. Honesty could have prevented some of the pain we both ended up feeling. It's a lesson I'll carry forward in all my future relationships, romantic or otherwise. Most importantly, I've discovered the strength within myself to rebuild and move on. Despite the heartache, I've started to feel genuinely good about myself again. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.